This is the backstory of Grimbow, my bard goblin, from the campaign that I'm currently in. This is going to be no more than 10 minutes, I promise. Our story begins in a small little village of about 100 and 150 little goblins. Grimbow, being the youngest child of three, lives on a farm, more of a ranch, with his mother and father. Grimbow has two older brothers and enjoys working. What do they do for a living? They're not like your typical goblins. What they do is they are bunny herders. They love to keep their bunnies, herd them across the new plains for different foods in order to get different textures grown on the fur of the bunnies. This allows them to cut it and sell the furs or the hairs for fibers for weaving of really soft fabric used in high-end clothing. And so what they do is they'll take their two of them will be shearing the soft velvety fur depending on where they migrate the bunnies to eat for the fur growth, and while the other one plays the family heirloom. It's a ancient harmonica called perfect pitch. They charm the bunny and they charm the bunnies to stay where they're at so that they can snip, snip, snip the fur, and then the bunnies go off to eat and enjoy their wonderful lives. This family heirloom has been part of or passed down for about 10 to 15 generations at this point. They can't exactly remember how they came to own such a rare item, but all they know is that without it, they would have no way to keep the farm without, otherwise, because the rabbits would be too fast. Which is why everyone would come far and wide to get their rabbit hairs to make fabric, because they were the one farm that was capable of getting so much fur. And it was oftentimes that royalty would send their local tailors out to gather from this small goblin village. Although they were a goblin village, they moved and migrated to this small area with about 150 other goblins who didn't want war, didn't want to fight, and just wanted to live a life and make an actual name for themselves. So these goblins were respected. They were known as the Kydals. That's what they referred to themselves. The Kydal goblins. So the one time a year in which the rabbits would not have their fur cut is during the winter seasons. That way they would be able to keep warm and wouldn't freeze to death. And unfortunately, this last winter has been unnaturally long. Grimbow and his two brothers and his parents have been waiting for the cold season to end. About what would be the equivalent of 4 months have gone by, and they're expecting spring to be around the corner, but it never showed. So they're never able to shear the rabbits, and running out of funds, they start to become desperate on how they're going to be able to afford to live. Reaching out into the small village, trying to find other means of money, the father started working at a butcher shop part-time, being unskilled with a knife. All he really could do was take orders, so the pay was minimal. The mother would go out and would wash clothing, but still the pay was minimal and not enough to keep feeding the rabbits and keep everything going. It looked as though Grimbow and his family were going to be suffering hard times. Being in the small village, everyone pulled together and made sure that Grimbow and his family would get by, at least for the time being. Feeling like a burden to the rest of the village, Grimbow set out playing with the harmonica. Normally he would walk on foot, but this time he decided to take the family pony. Just barely being able to make means, the village was providing them with food, but the bunnies needed more. The bunnies needed a lot more. They were starting to starve, and the food supplies, even provided by the village, wouldn't be enough to keep the bunnies going for more than another week or two. And the way that this unnatural winter was going, there's no way it would be over before then. So Grimbow reluctantly took the family pony, in which Grimbow honestly never really cared for. Not as much as he loved his family, his friends the rabbits, and everyone in the village who was wholesome in a small folk community. He loved them all and wanted to try. So he set off to a neighboring town. As he arrived there, it was a bigger city, and a lot of people questioned Grimbow on, yeah, so he went off looking for work. He was going into bards and playing the family heirloom, trying to collect gold or silver or even coppers at this point, so that he could trade for rabbit food to keep his immense rabbit population fed through this harsh winter. After about a week of performing, Grimbow had managed to collect about 3 gold pieces, 2 silvers, and 4 coppers. This would be enough for him to buy at least some rabbit food, which could prolong the inevitable if this winter would not end. Feeling desperate, going off to the store to buy the food, he saw a shadowy pathway and a voice that was beckoning him. Grimbow, what you seek I can give. Being surprised, Grimbow walked forward. How do you know my name? I know many things, Grimbow. Do you want me to perform for you? I can play you a song. Oh no, Grimbow. That won't be necessary here. Grimbow started to feel uneasy, taking a couple steps back. Don't worry, Grimbow. I hold you no harm. A long, cloaked figure, where only the eyes could be seen, walks out. The hands look unnaturally white with black fingernails, proceeds forward. Grimbow, feeling uneasy, asked the tall figure, And how can you help Grimbow? I won't. You can help yourself. A flick of the wrist, and a deck of cards lands in the hand of this unknown entity. Grimbow, this is a deck of fate. I shall shuffle the deck, and you can draw a card if you wish. Depending on the card you draw, your fate will be changed forever. Grimbow thought about it, looked down at his gold pieces and silvers and coppers, and realized he had enough to increase his food supply for maybe a week at best. And the time that he would travel back home and then back out here, it really wouldn't have made much of a difference. So, thinking about all of his friends, everyone in the village, his family, and his rabbits, which he called family as well, Grimbow scratched his cheek and said, I will draw a card. So he goes and starts playing a song to soothe himself and to give himself guidance. The unmasked man shuffles the decks with magic as the cards fly through the air and then land in front of Grimbow. The deck splits open and the cards slide apart. Now draw. Grimbow slides his hand up and down the cards that are spread apart, placing 2 of his fingers on one, taking a deep breath, and then pulling the card. He holds the card to his chest, and the mystery man says, Reveal your card. Grimbow turns the card around without looking. The man says, "My, oh my, Grimbow, how your fate has changed." "What do you mean?" Grimbow, flipping the card around, realizing it's the card of flames. Not knowing what this card does, Grimbow excitedly gives the card back to the man. If it is a man. He walks back into the shadow without saying a word to Grimbow. Grimbow says, "Wait! What does this mean?" He runs off into the shadow to find a dead end with nothing there. Confused, but also hopeful, Grimbow hops back on his pony and travels back home, which is about a 2-day ride. Thinking that he had changed his fate, he left with the rabbit food and a couple of apples and meals for himself and the pony. He gets on the edge of the village, happy as could be, love in his heart and knowing that he had changed his fate. Smiles down at his village, starts to smell. "What's that? It's smoke? What?" Grimbow kicks the pony, nudging him slightly to move quicker as they slightly gallop into the view of the overpass. Looking down on the village, Grimbow sees that his entire village is burned down. Traveling into town, there is not anything left standing. Every piece of wood that has been created, the bakers, the tailors, the everything was so burned that it was just char and ash. Looking around, there's just bodies of goblins laying everywhere, burned and skinned, blistered. Grimbow panics, thinks of his family, and he takes off galloping. About another 2 miles out, and he's riding hard, and sweat is pouring down him as his heart is pounding, wondering what's going on, and he gets there just in time to see a man, tall man with a black hat and what appears to be a black suit, burning down his house. "What are you doing? Stop!" Grimbow jumps off the pony without thinking, runs up to the man and begins to hit the man. The man turns around, looks at Grimbow, and gives him a hollow Chester smile with dark eyes. Becoming feared, Grimbow is shaken where he stands, unable to move. He looks at Grimbow and says, "It's not your turn yet." Grimbow, frozen in fear, sees as his mother and his 2 siblings lay blistered and dead, as the father becomes running around the corner with a shovel, raising the shovel above his head just with enough time to start swinging down as the man flicks his wrist and flames just consume him. Looking out into the field, all the rabbits have been blistered and destroyed. All the beautiful furs evaporated, nothing left. The land has been permanently scorched. The demon turns to Grimbow, gets on one knee and says, "Now it's your turn." Breaking through his fear with a good save of will, Grimbow's torn between anger and rage of what's happened and fear of what's about to happen. And the demon looks at Grimbow and says, You have lost it all. Your family, your friends, your loved ones have been killed. Now it's you." Doing the only thing Grimbow could think to do, he put the harmonica to his mouth and played, doing a natural 20 crit save, and he charmed the demon. He charmed him with a confirmed crit. The demon, being compelled to continue upon the quest of his release due to the card of flame, even though he is charmed, will obey. Once the card is complete, he'll be released onto the planet to do as the demon wants. But being charmed, the demon is also really complex with emotions and does not want to kill Grimbow, but knows he must kill him to get his freedom from the Cart of Flames. So the demon gets on one knee and says, Grimbow, you will die. And he takes his hat off as he begins to morph, and his fangs grow out, and his body becomes cold, and his fingernails grow, and he bites Grimbow on the neck as Grimbow lays there, trembling in fear, gasping his last breaths. Grimbow loses consciousness before waking back up. Once returning to consciousness, he feels cold. Matter of fact, he can't feel anything. He doesn't feel heat. He doesn't feel cold. He feels nothing. No temperatures at all. He checks his pulse. There's nothing there. He looks around. There's nothing there. It's dark, but he can somehow see perfectly, as though it was day. And with a slight urge, he begins to go through what was once his home, coming to the realization that he did truly change his fate, and not for the better. He hopped on to his pony, taking the family heirloom after burying his brothers, his mother and his father, vowing to never pick up a weapon, and trying to play for the gods to make sure that his family and his friends have a better life in the afterlife. Consumed with guilt, he leaves his village and begins his quest to redeem his family and to redeem himself for the horrible actions in which he has done. This has been the backstory of Grimbow, the Goblin Bard. Thank you for watching. And if you'd like to know more of the D&D campaign as it goes on, leave comments down below. Bye!